The night Mira fell asleep clutching a broken compass was the night everything changed forever. She didn't know that the old brass instrument her grandmother had given her before vanishing into the mist 3 years ago was actually a key to another realm, a place where dreams weren't just fleeting images but living, breathing worlds that shaped reality itself. All Myra knew was that her grandmother's last words echoed in her mind every single night: when you re-lost, follow what your heart knows is true, not what your eyes tell you is real. The 12-year-old girl had spent countless nights trying to decode that cryptic message, turning the compass over in her hands, watching its needles spin wildly in every direction except north, wondering if maybe her grandmother had simply been confused in those final moments before she disappeared without a trace. But tonight, as Mira drifted into sleep in her small attic bedroom with rain drumming against the window, the compass began to glow with a soft golden light that pulsed like a heartbeat. If you're feeling that pull of curiosity right now, that sense that something extraordinary is about to unfold, then stay with me on this journey, because what happens next will take us to places beyond imagination. And I'd love for you to subscribe so we can explore more incredible stories together. The light grew brighter, and suddenly Mira felt herself falling not down but sideways, through layers of consciousness, through veils of sleep and waking, until she landed with a soft thud on ground that felt like clouds but held her weight like solid earth. When Myra opened her eyes, she found herself standing in a vast landscape that defied all logic and reason. The sky above her was painted in swirling colors that shifted from deep purple to burning orange to electric blue, and instead of clouds, there were floating islands of crystallized thoughts, each one glowing with different intensities depending on the strength of the dream that created it. Below her feet, the ground was made of compressed starlight that rippled outward with every step she took, sending waves of luminescence across the endless expanse. In the distance, she could see towering structures that looked like they were built from pure emotion, castles made of joy that sparkled with laughter, fortresses of fear that loomed dark and menacing, bridges of hope that arched across impossible distances, connecting one dream realm to another. "You shouldn't be here," a voice said from behind her, and Mira spun around to find herself face to face with a boy who looked about her age but whose eyes held the weight of centuries. He was tall and lean, with silver hair that moved as if caught in an invisible wind, and he wore clothes that seemed to be woven from moonlight and shadow. Humans don't just stumble into the dreamscape. It takes years of training to cross the threshold consciously, and even then most people can only observe, never interact. "How did you get here?" Mira held up the compass, which was still glowing in her hand. "This belonged to my grandmother. She disappeared 3 years ago and nobody knows where she went. I fell asleep holding it, and then I was falling, and now I am here, and I don't understand any of this." The boy's eyes widened when he saw the compass, and he took a step back. "That's a wayfinder. There are only 7 in existence, and they're all supposed to be locked away in the archive of lost things. Your grandmother must have been a dreamweaver, one of the guardians who maintain the balance between the waking world and the realm of dreams. If she gave you that compass, then she must have known something terrible was coming." "What do you mean terrible?" Mira asked, feeling a chill run down her spine despite the warm glow of the starlight beneath her feet. "My name is Kale, and I'm a dream walker, someone born in this realm who can move between different dreams and help maintain their stability," the boy explained, his expression growing grave. "For the past 3 years, the dreamscape has been deteriorating. Nightmares that should stay contained in their own domains have been breaking free and corrupting other dreams, turning beautiful memories into twisted horrors. The Council of Weavers has been trying to stop it, but they're losing ground every day. Some people think it's because the Nightmare King has returned." "The Nightmare King," Mira repeated, the name sending shivers through her entire body. Kale nodded slowly. "He's an ancient entity who feeds on fear and despair. Thousands of years ago, he nearly destroyed both the dreamscape and the waking world by turning every dream into a nightmare, trapping people in endless cycles of terror until they couldn't tell what was real anymore. The first Dreamweavers managed to imprison him in the void between worlds, but the seal has been weakening. If he breaks free completely, both realms will fall into eternal darkness." Before Myra could respond, the ground beneath them began to shake violently. The starlight that had been glowing softly suddenly flickered and dimmed, and in the distance, one of the floating islands of crystallized thought shattered into a million pieces that rained down like glass. A sound like thunder rolled across the landscape, but it wasn't thunder at all. It was laughter. deep and malevolent and filled with such pure malice that Mira felt her knees go weak. "He knows you're here," Kale said urgently, grabbing Mira's arm. "The Wayfinder must have triggered some kind of alarm. We need to get you to the sanctuary before his shadow creatures find us. Can you run?" Mira didn't answer with words. She just started running, following Kale as he sprinted across the rippling starlight ground toward a distant structure that looked like it was made of woven light. Behind them she could hear something pursuing, something that sounded like 1,000 whispers, all speaking at once, saying her name over and over in voices that promised endless suffering. She pushed herself harder, her lungs burning. The compass clutched tight in her fist as its glow intensified with every step. They burst through the entrance of the sanctuary just as a wave of darkness crashed against the barrier behind them. Inside, the structure was vast and filled with shelves that stretched up into infinity, each one holding books and scrolls and objects that glowed with their own inner light. At the center of the space stood a woman with long flowing hair the color of midnight and eyes that sparkled like distant stars. She wore robes that seemed to be made of aurora borealis, shifting through every color imaginable. And when she saw the compass in Mira's hand, her expression shifted from surprise to understanding to deep sorrow. "You're Elena's granddaughter," the woman said softly, "and it wasn't a question. I'm Lyra, the keeper of the sanctuary, and the last of the original dream weavers. Your grandmother was my closest friend and the most powerful weaver of our generation. When she disappeared 3 years ago, we thought the Nightmare King had captured her, but now I understand what she was really doing. She was preparing you." "Preparing me for what?" Mira asked, her voice shaking. "I'm just a kid. I don't have any special powers. I can't even remember most of my dreams when I wake up." Lyra smiled sadly. "That's because you've been blocking them out, building walls in your mind to protect yourself from the truth. Your grandmother knew that you inherited her gift, that you were born with the ability to shape dreams and nightmares alike. She gave you the Wayfinder because she knew that one day you would need to come here and finish what she started. The Nightmare King's prison is breaking, and the only way to reinforce it is to venture into the void between worlds and repair the seal from the inside. But it requires someone who can walk the line between dreaming and waking, someone who belongs to both realms equally. And you think that's me?" Mira said incredulously. "I don't know how to do any of this. I don't know how to shape dreams or fight nightmares or repair magical seals. I'm going to fail, and everyone is going to suffer because of it." Kale stepped forward and placed a hand on her shoulder. "I felt the same way when I first learned what I was. Being a dreamwalker isn't about having all the answers or being fearless. It's about choosing to act even when you're terrified, about believing that your actions matter even when the odds seem impossible. Your grandmother believed in you enough to give you the most powerful artifact in existence. Maybe it's time you started believing in yourself too." His words struck something deep inside Mira, a spark of courage she didn't know she possessed. She thought about all the nights she'd spent wondering where her grandmother had gone, all the times she'd felt lost and alone, all the moments when she'd wished for something more than her ordinary life. Maybe this was why she'd always felt like she didn't quite fit in the waking world, because part of her had always belonged here in the realm of dreams. "Okay," Mira said, straightening her shoulders and meeting Lyra's gaze. "Tell me what I need to do. Over the next hours or days or weeks." Time moved strangely in the dreamscape. Lyra taught Mira the fundamentals of dream weaving. She learned how to reach into the fabric of reality and pull threads of possibility, how to shape them into solid forms or dissolve them back into pure potential. She practiced creating simple objects first: a flower made of light, a bird that sang with the voice of wind chimes, a sword that could cut through nightmares without harming the dreamer. Kale worked with her on combat techniques, teaching her how to move through the dreamscapes, shifting terrain, how to recognize the signs of nightmare corruption, how to defend herself against shadow creatures that fed on doubt and fear. But the most important lesson came from Lyra one evening, as they stood on a balcony overlooking the vast expanse of the dreamscape. "The Nightmare King draws his power from people's deepest fears and darkest thoughts," Lyra explained. "He can't be defeated through force alone because fear is a fundamental part of being alive. What your grandmother understood, what she tried to teach the other weavers, is that the only way to truly contain the Nightmare King is to accept fear as part of yourself, rather than trying to destroy it. When you enter the void between worlds, you'll be confronted with every nightmare you've ever had, every terror you've tried to suppress. If you fight them, you'll lose. But if you acknowledge them, accept them as part of who you are, then they lose their power over you. Mira absorbed these words, turning them over in her mind as she prepared for the journey ahead. She thought about her grandmother, about the courage it must have taken to face the Nightmare King alone, about the sacrifice she'd made to buy the world 3 more years of safety. She wouldn't let that sacrifice be in vain. The day finally came when Myra stood before the gateway to the void, a swirling vortex of absolute darkness that seemed to consume all light and hope. Kale stood beside her, having insisted on accompanying her despite Lyra's protests. "You're not doing this alone," he'd said firmly. "Dreamwalkers are meant to guide people through their nightmares. That's my purpose, and I'm not abandoning it now." Together, they stepped through the gateway, and immediately Mira felt like she was drowning in ice water. The darkness pressed in from all sides, suffocating and absolute, and she could hear voices whispering all her worst fears. "You're not strong enough. You're going to fail. Everyone you love will suffer because of your weakness." She felt herself starting to panic, felt the compass in her hand growing cold as the darkness tried to corrupt it. Then she remembered Lyra's words, and instead of fighting the fear, she let herself feel it fully. Yes, she was afraid. Yes, she might fail. Yes, the stakes were impossibly high. But fear didn't make her weak. It made her human. And being human meant having the capacity for courage precisely because she understood what was at risk. She reached deep inside herself and found that spark of light her grandmother had always told her existed in everyone. That core of hope and love and determination that no darkness could ever fully extinguish. The compass blazed to life in her hand, its golden light cutting through the void like a beacon. Beside her, Kale's form glowed with silver radiance as he channeled his own inner strength. Together, they pushed forward through the darkness until they reached the center of the void where the Nightmare King's prison stood. A cage made of crystallized dreams that was cracked and crumbling. And there, standing before the prison, was Mira's grandmother. Alina looked exactly as Myra remembered her, with kind eyes and gentle smile, but there was something different about her now, a translucent quality that suggested she wasn't entirely solid anymore. "I've been holding the seal together from the inside," Alina explained, her voice echoing strangely in the void. "It was the only way to buy enough time for you to grow strong enough to finish the work, but I can't maintain it much longer. The Nightmare King's power is too great and I'm fading." "Grandmother," Mira whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I don't want to lose you again." "You never lost me, sweetheart," Alina said softly. "I've been with you every night in your dreams, watching over you, guiding you, even when you didn't know it. And I'll continue to be with you after this is done, just in a different way. Now listen carefully. To repair the seal, you need to weave together 3 threads, a thread of fear to acknowledge the darkness, a thread of hope to balance it, and a thread of love to bind them together. The Nightmare King can never be destroyed because fear is eternal, but he can be contained as long as people remember that fear doesn't have to control them." Myra nodded, understanding flooding through her. She reached out with her newfound abilities and began to weave, pulling threads from her own experiences, from every moment of terror she'd ever felt, and every moment of joy that had followed. She wove in her fear of losing her grandmother, and her hope that they would meet again someday. She wove in Kale's determination, and Lyra's wisdom, and the love of everyone who had ever fought against the darkness. The threads came together in her hands, forming a tapestry of light and shadow that pulsed with power. As she worked, the Nightmare King's voice boomed through the void, trying to break her concentration with promises of power and threats of destruction, but Mira didn't listen. She focused on the feeling of her grandmother's hand on her shoulder, on Kale's steady presence beside her, on the compass that had guided her here. She poured everything she had into the weaving until finally, with a sound like 1,000 bells ringing in harmony, the seal snapped into place, stronger than it had ever been before. The Nightmare King's roar of fury shook the entire void, but the prison held firm, the cracks sealing themselves with threads of golden light. Alina smiled at Mira one last time, her form beginning to dissolve into pure radiance. "I'm so proud of you," she whispered. "Remember, when you're lost, follow what your heart knows is true. I love you, always." Then she was gone, her essence merging with the seal itself, becoming part of the eternal barrier between nightmare and dream. Mira felt a sob tear from her throat, but also felt a strange sense of peace. Her grandmother hadn't been taken from her. She had chosen to become something greater, a guardian who would watch over both realms forever. Kale took her hand, and together they made their way back through the void to the dreamscape. When they emerged, Lyra was waiting with tears of joy streaming down her face, The entire realm had transformed, the corrupted nightmares dissolving back into harmless shadows, the floating islands of thought glowing brighter than ever, the sky painted in colors so beautiful they defied description. "You did it," Lyra said, pulling Mira into a tight embrace. "You saved both worlds. Your grandmother would be so proud." "She is proud," Mira said softly, touching the compass which now hung round her neck on a silver chain. "I can feel it." Lyra explained that Mira could return to the waking world whenever she wished, but that she would always be able to come back to the dreamscape, that she was now a true dream weaver with responsibilities to both realms. Myra accepted this with a sense of purpose she'd never felt before. She had found her place, her calling, her reason for being. When she finally opened her eyes in her attic bedroom, dawn light was streaming through the window, and the rain had stopped. The compass lay warm against her chest, and she could still feel the echo of her grandmother's presence. She knew that her life would never be the same, that she would spend her nights walking between worlds, helping people face their fears and find their courage, maintaining the balance between dreaming and waking. But she also knew something more important, something that would guide her through every challenge ahead. Fear was not the enemy, it was simply a part of being alive, and the true measure of courage wasn't the absence of fear but the choice to act despite it. Her grandmother had taught her that lesson through sacrifice and love, and Mira would carry it with her always, a light in the darkness, a compass pointing toward hope. As she got ready for school that morning, Mira smiled at her reflection in the mirror, seeing not just a 12-year-old girl but a dream weaver, a guardian, a bridge between worlds. She had discovered that the most powerful magic wasn't found in ancient artifacts or mystical realms, but in the human heart's capacity to love, to hope, and to choose courage over fear. And that was a lesson worth sharing with everyone she met, in dreams and in waking life alike, for as long as she lived.